Okay, today we have a former member of the West Virginia State Senate and the national spokesman for No Dem Left Behind, Richard Ojeda. Richard, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it.
So I want to jump right in here with what I think is the most important question. You know, you're from West Virginia. That is a state that's been of particular focus lately. So, in your opinion, what's the best way to approach the Joe Manchin situation as a holdout on the filibuster, knowing that on one hand, democracy is at stake, and on the other hand, bucking the party actually helps him in a state like West Virginia?
With Joe Manchin, I kind of feel like, he may be a bridge too far. I hate to say it, but I think that the best thing that we could possibly do is to try to flip red seats blue so that we no longer have to rely on Joe Manchin. Because at the end of the day, when it's time for him to step up to the plate, he proves that he's just not wanting to do what the Democrats need to get done. The Republicans want to go into 2022 and basically say the Democrats got nothing done. And the downside to this is that Joe Manchin and Sinema are actually helping them to be able to accomplish that. And that's just a shame.
Well, with that said, I mean, look, Manchin is part of a 50-50 Senate. That means we need all 50 Democrats. So what's the most effective way to pressure him? Because I think a lot of us fall into the trap of just wailing relentlessly into the void on Twitter and not exactly sure that's moving the needle here.
No, I mean, with Joe Manchin, obviously it's trying to reach out to him and let him know what he needs to do, what right looks like. The sad part about Joe Manchin is I believe, when he ran for US Senate the last time, one of the things that he told people was this was it. This was going to be his last run. But you see all the things that he is doing. And what I am kind of reading from this is that I believe that in 2024, Joe Manchin's going to actually try to run for governor of West Virginia. And that will be it for him. And what he's doing right now is he's trying to relate with all of the Republicans. He wants to go into 2024 and say, look, everybody, look at these photographs. Look, me and Donald Trump had a great relationship. I was one of the ones that wanted to work with him so that he can get the Republican vote in West Virginia to support him as well, because he still is basically, not owed, but he actually had won his reelection for governor. But then immediately after he had won it, our United States Senator passed away, and he basically appointed himself to that role. So he still has another term that he could serve.
Speaking of Democrats serving in red states, tell us about No Dem Left Behind.
Well, No Dem Left Behind, I believe right now is probably the most important fight that we have in America today. Because if all we're going to do is focus on, protecting the blue seats in blue areas, the best case scenario that we're going to get is 50-50 with Kamala Harris being the tie-breaking vote. But if we want to stop that, then we need to actually invest in red rural districts to flip red seats blue. And that's what No Dem Left Behind does. We go into these areas. We're supporting Marcus Flowers. We're going to support, we're already supporting Val Demings, and we're supporting Tim Ryan. But we're looking at races all across this country to try to find solid candidates that absolutely have the ability to run and win in these areas so that we can take so we don't have to worry about the filibuster being always the thing that keeps us from getting anything done. We want to be able to flip red seats blue so we don't have to worry about the filibuster.
Now, what have you found is the best way for Democrats to get elected in places that we'd consider, deep red districts or states?
Yeah, you got to find people that, obviously you actually care, want to be heard, and be willing to do things that the Republicans are never willing to do. And one of the things that I tell people all the time is that, initially, live videos. Going live and looking at the constituents in your area, whether it be a red area or not, and saying, this allows you better access to me than lobbyists. And I tell these candidates at least twice a week, do live videos where you answer the questions from anybody who wants to come on there, because you're not going to see the Republicans do that. And if the Republicans do a live video, the questions are already given to them. They're not taking questions from people because they don't want to answer the questions of the people. But that lets folks know that you're willing to face them. And then you let them know that if I'm successful and I win, I will still do this at least weekly or bi-weekly, where I allow you the ability to speak face to face with me on a live chat. That's crucial. So that's a big issue that I think is important, making sure that you're out there and you're willing to say what needs to be said. It's getting boots on the ground. It's working. You're not going to win these races in red districts unless you literally commit to it. And I tell people it's like a combat deployment. You get off the airplane and you go nonstop until it's time to get back on the airplane and go home. If you have to sleep under a bridge to make sure that you can get, to a location early in the morning, then you sleep under that bridge. Get it done.
I know that you mentioned a couple races. What races are you most excited about heading into 2022? Are there any?
Well, I want to go after these people. I want to go after the Jim Jordans. I want to go after the Lauren Boeberts, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes. And here's the thing: the stuff that is going on right now, I believe, is really starting to wake people up. When you realize that Jim Jordan has been in Congress for 10 years plus, and he has never so much as pushed and passed a single bill. You got to call these people out. Your job is to go to Washington, D.C. to bring funding back, to bring capabilities back to your constituents. And these are people who have been there for decades and have done nothing. Matt Gaetz has accomplished nothing for his people. Marjorie Taylor Greene has done nothing but go and make a lot of noise, but she's done nothing. She doesn't even have a committee that she sits on because of her actions. So it's about letting people know this is who you have. And yep, they're a Republican. But they have done nothing for you. They have brought you no capabilities. They have not made your lives any better. So now try this person, because this person is committed to going there. And it's not about, you got to turn this into about that bridge, about that road, about that school. We got to stop allowing the Republicans to just make it abortion and they're going to take your guns. No, you actually bring it to what's important to the people.
Yeah, they rely on these culture war issues like a crutch, and I think at the end of the day, it's not critical race theory that's impacting anybody's life. You know what I mean, on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly, and that's what they're running with. And and once again, we're already seeing they're going to now take your guns. They've never taken your guns. Democrats own guns too, but once again, this is all they have because they cannot look you in the face and talk about the issues.
Yeah. One thing that I thought was one thing that I think is pretty funny is, we hear these socialism attacks that have been rearing up for decades. We had 8 years of Bill Clinton. We had 8 years of Barack Obama. We're now in a Biden presidency, and all of the things that they fearmongered that could happen if we elect a Democrat. We've had decades of Democrats, and miraculously, the U.S. hasn't devolved into socialism. So I just think it's funny that they can keep using these arguments when they've been disproven by virtue of having elected Democrats time and time again.
They want to just make sure that on election day, they can convince the poorly educated to get up and go out and vote for them. Good old Republicans that are fighting for every child. They don't care about the fetus. These are the people that cut the programs to feed the child, to clothe the child, to educate the child. They don't care about that. I mean, if you go and look back, they're always screaming about how evil the Democratic Party are and how they're all a bunch of pedophiles. But who in the last 2 years in politics and at a national level has been caught doing things the wrong way in that aspect? Republicans. Yeah. It's a double standard that they have and they push.
So I want to switch gears here and focus on COVID for a sec. COVID cases are obviously back on the rise, and we've seen that hospitalizations and deaths are almost exclusively among the unvaccinated. And yet at the same time, you have right-wing media to this day that's been discouraging vaccines. So what's your response to people like Tucker Carlson, who I believe just a few days ago said that Dr. Fauci created COVID, who've likened the vaccine to forced sterilization? He's grossly misrepresented VAERS data and on and on.
Yeah, this is absolutely atrocious, the behaviors of some of these people like Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, basically Fox News. People are dying here. And what's really messed up is that, once again, if you look at the people that are dying and you look at the spikes, they're in red districts. You're killing your own base. You're killing your own base. The people out there that are screaming, I'm not going to get vaccinated, I don't trust it. These are those QAnon folks. and they vote Republican. And these people are basically convincing their own base to refuse the intelligence that's coming from Dr. Fauci and just go with it. They're killing their own people. And I don't understand, how they can't see this. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a reckoning. Fox News, these news anchors, their attacks on the vaccine, their misinformation concerning the pandemic, they need to be held accountable. 600 and almost 30,000 Americans have lost their lives. And this is a pandemic. We know that it was dereliction of duty when it comes to Donald Trump. Donald Trump needs to be held accountable for this. Donald Trump actually said right before the November election that as soon as the election is over, you're probably not going to hear from me again. Basically saying that this was all nothing more than a hoax to try to derail his campaign. Millions of people across the globe have lost their lives to this. And for these people to try to equate it to the Holocaust and things like that is absolutely sickening, and they all need to be held accountable. Children are dying. Children are dying. The hospitals are filled to capacity now. We're not going forward. We're moving backwards. Mask mandates are coming back out. I mean, it is atrocious that we have so many people that are supposed to be leaders in this country that are taking people down this path that are going to cause them to lose their loved ones, to lose their lives, to lose their health. And that's where we're going. And it is sickening, and it needs to be dealt with.
So I want to end on this. We've heard from Republicans for years about the platitudes about being the back the blue party, the pro-police party. Since then, of course, we've watched as Republicans have attacked the Capitol Police for speaking out about their lives being put in danger on January 6th. Fox News hosts have been mocking them. Conservative pundits have been saying that they're unfit to serve. You were a member of the military. You served in the Army for 24 years. What's your response to these pundits mocking law enforcement from their couches?
Well, first and foremost, the whole back the blue thing was nothing more than a ploy to try to get the police to join their side. The moment that they got to that point where the police said, you can no longer go past this point, then all of a sudden the police become the enemy of the people. And that's what we've seen. And, when you listen to those 4 police officers and their testimonies, if it didn't hit you in the chest, if it didn't hurt your feelings knowing that those people in there fighting for their lives, those African-American police officers were hit with racial slurs that showed exactly who those people really were that attacked our Capitol. This is absolutely unacceptable. I want to see bad police officers held accountable. I'm tired of watching African Americans die because they move their hands from the 10-2 to the 9-3. But we do have great police officers out there as well. And, this was nothing more than this was an attack. And to try to paint the police, especially the Capitol Police and those police officers that absolutely responded because they heard the calls on the radio, like Officer Fanone, for anybody to look at them in any other way than they are absolute national heroes. They should be given everything that they could possibly need. They need to get better funding. They need to make sure that their health care is taken care of. And anybody that's against that is absolutely pure trash in my book. Those people are heroes. And what we saw on January the 6th is that racism in this country is absolutely not. It is alive and well, and we need to do something to deal with it.
I'm glad that you brought up the issue of those racial epithets, because that was the part when listening to those testimonies that really hit me. I mean, there was I believe one police officer said that he'd never been called any racial slur in his entire life, and to have it be done, defending the Capitol in Washington D.C. is just that streak ended that day. Yeah. And then, they find themselves attacked. I mean, I think back about the guy that had the hockey stick, and he was just hammering people with that hockey stick. You saw bricks, you saw things being thrown at police officers. And, you hear how, the one police officer had to fight his way
to get into the Capitol. And then the moment he got into the Capitol, then he had to fight his way to the front and then fight. I mean, he was the one that was crushed in the door. They ripped off his mask. You know, if you can't listen to those stories and look at them as heroes, then you're not a good person. You have a flaw in your system that does not recognize that, you know, and then, you know, if you're there, you know, some of those people had Camp Auschwitz shirts on. These people have mental flaws. Racist people in this country absolutely are flawed mentally. And it's just, we saw it all in full view on January the 6th.
I do have one more question, and that is another run for office in your future?
Well, you know, I'm getting ready to leave West Virginia and move to North Carolina. I'm not going to North Carolina to run for office. I don't need to be a politician. It was never about a position or a title for me. It was about fighting people that don't do their damn jobs and making them do their jobs. Now, I'm not going to North Carolina to run for office, but I'm never going to say never, because if I go someplace and I see somebody that's up there that thinks that they can do what they want when they want, and they don't want to represent the people, then I reserve the right to poke them in the face.
Richard, where can we hear more from you?
Well, I go live every night. I have my regular Facebook, and I got the blue check mark. I go live every night from 8 to 9 o'clock. I have a YouTube page called Airborne. This is, you know, I'll kind of show the shirt there, Airborne. And of course, my Twitter name is Ojeda #4 America. And I do live videos. I you know, let the people ask me questions and stuff. And I do it every night. And of course, obviously, you can also follow No Dem Left Behind. And remember that we're the ones going into the red rural areas to try to flip seats blue, and we can't do it without you.
Well, Richard, you know, your passion is inspiring. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk. I appreciate it.
Brother, thank you for having me on, man.